Grand Servants, the pinnacle of heroic spirits, those who are summoned forth to combat the beasts of humanity. Several may qualify, but only one can truly hold the title of each class at a time. Hello everyone and welcome to the Anime Void. I'm Brian, your host, and today we will be discussing Grand Servants and who I believe should be Grand Saber. And before we get into it, as of writing this script, I know that Grand Berserker hasn't been revealed yet either. But they may be by the time that I get around to uploading this, and if they don't, I personally do not care. Because just what does Grand Berserker even mean? That you're just the most insane? Is it going to be the Joker? We live in a society, master. But with that in mind, let's define each of the grand qualifications that we know of or can speculate on, leading up to talking about possible Grand Saber candidates. For broad qualifications, these heroic spirits must be some of the best in their respective classes. And furthermore, they cannot be divine spirits. Some classes do have further restrictions on top of this, only one of which is confirmed at this time. Starting with Grand Assassin, this is the only class that has just one qualifying heroic spirit, that being the first Hassan-i-Saba, the Old Man of the Mountain, being one with the concept of death itself, stands unrivaled. The Assassin of Assassins. With that, we can speculate that one must walk in the Valley of the Shadow of Death in order to get this qualification, thus meaning that Gramps is the only one to truly do that. Or it could just be his unparalleled strength within the class alone that grants him this position. Grandcaster is the class that we not only have the most confirmed candidates, but is also the one with a defined extra qualification. In order to qualify for the rank of Grandcaster, a heroic spirit must have some form of extremely powerful, likely nearly perfect, clairvoyance. The qualifying candidates revealed so far are Solomon, Merlin, and Caster Gilgamesh. I will not be counting Tai Gong Wong for Grand anything because he is kind of sus. For the position of Grand Rider, it is currently held by Noah, which I feel is largely expected. Not so much the needlessly fused with Nemo part, but in general. Having command of pretty much every corporeal mount conceivable, commanding the Ark, and having enough divine blessings that I would not be surprised if he could command phantasmals as well. I would say he more than qualifies for being one of the more powerful riders. Hell, being able to command every type of mount might even be a specific qualification. And now we reach the Grand Knight classes, and it's here that everything kind of goes out the window. Between Orion and Romulus Quirinus, there seems to be no distinct qualifier other than they are strong as hell. Though, Romulus Quirinus does have a distinction of being an exception to the rule of divine spirits, given his intrinsic connection with mankind. So, while Grand Cavalry seems to either hint or directly spell out special attributes a candidate must have, the Grand Knights seem to only qualify by strength and strength alone. This is rather boring in the grand scheme of things. However, with this in mind, and looking over the sabers, it does narrow it down quite a bit. And before we jump into that, real quick, you can become a Grand Subscriber class just by hitting the subscribe button and clicking the like button too if you're enjoying the video. Now, let's get into the Grand Saber candidates. First, we have Attila the Hun, aka Altera, aka the King of Combat. She is destruction incarnate, and in her origins, she is able to best the like of Mars as the White Titan. Of course, in her current form, with the spirit origin that she has, she can't access her full capabilities without damaging herself. However, an upgraded form is not out of the question, as demonstrated with both Orion and Romulus. So it is possible for her to obtain a Grand Spirit origin and be closer to being Sephar, unleashing her full power. This would also be an interesting route to go if they decide to make the White Titan a beast class, pairing her against Grand Saber Attila the Hun. Next, we have the two most obvious choices, Artoria and Arthur. But I'm mostly going to be talking about Artoria because if King Arthur is going to be a Grand Saber, it has to be her. I like Arthur well enough. He's my boy. But if he ends up being Grand Saber, I will vomit blood. King Arthur is canonically said to be the strongest saber. Sure, this may have been retconned at this point, or maybe it hasn't, but still, it would remain that Artoria is very close to the top, so Grand Candidate is very obvious. But my extreme feelings for it having to be her is because of how completely shafted the OG Saber has been. Now, I know what you're thinking. You may hear that and think I am crazy, that Artoria still gets lots of attention. She shows up a bunch. And while, yes, to a certain extent, the idea of Artoria Pendragon is overdone to death, but I really want you to think about the character herself. How often do you see the original Artoria? Not an altar, not from the servant verse, not whatever the hell Castoria is, and not one of the ones with award-winning coconuts. Just our normal, old-school, flat-chested King of Knights. Did you know that she only has 2 voice lines related to other characters? And those 2 characters are Emiya Archer and Gilgamesh. 7 years of this game, and she doesn't have a single voice line for a Rin face, a Sakura face, a different Saber face, one of her clones, an Ilia face, Emiya Assassin, Irisfiel, any of her knights, or even Muramasa. Anytime that something happens with the round table in an interlude, it's almost never her anymore. It's the Lancer version. The underutilization of the original Artoria is downright criminal. And yes, you can say the same about other servants, but we are focusing on Artoria right now. And you may be one of those people who say, oh, but her story's over. She doesn't need any more development. And to that, I say you are a shill and you speak nonsense. We did see development and a full story arc made in Fate Stay Night stories. But how does that development change the way she interacts with characters from her past? How does this finished story Artoria interact with new situations? There is no such thing as a finished story. Even when something ends from our perspective, it still continues on from the perspective of the characters within the story. You think the kid you knew in high school and haven't seen since magically remains stagnant because you no longer perceive them? That is ridiculous. And just because we are dealing with a fictional character doesn't mean the same logic can't apply. There is always an after to happily ever after. And I'm not even saying that Artoria needs to be the constant center of attention. I don't want that. Hell, I'm just going to be satisfied if we get better room dialogues. And also, give her her suit already. What is wrong with you people? Still, the fact remains that Artoria is one of the most powerful sabers, story-wise, and is therefore more than qualified to be Grand Saber. She could even be summoned wielding Avalon as well for extra power. However, even with all that said, there is one heroic spirit that qualifies not only in terms of strength, but also narrative viability. And that is the Wandering Swordswoman, Miyamoto Musashi. And here's a big old spoiler warning if you have not finished the Olympus Lost Belt, because I am talking about its ending. This is your only chance play the story, come back when you're done. Now, I doubt there is any debate on Musashi's power, as she was able to cut through the void, a truly spectacular feat. But that moment is also why she may be a questionable choice. She's not from proper human history. She's from a lost belt, so when she was incinerated, we are unable to restore her, as her spirit origin isn't in the Throne of Heroes, which is why she shows up as Data Lost when you look her up. This is verifiable bullshit. Even if we are to move forward with the idea that the Lost Belt servants that we already summon aren't canonically their Lost Belt counterparts, or are just non-canonical summons in general, we still have the precedent of a servant's spirit origin that was never in the Throne of Heroes, ending up there by virtue of being recognized by Ritsuka Fujimaru, or their deeds being recognized by the world. In fact, we have two examples, those being Jeanne d'Arc Alter and Sir Bedivere. Jolter, by all rights of the narrative, shouldn't exist, as she is an impossibility only brought into existence by Gilles de Rais, using the Holy Grail. Jeanne d'Arc was too inhumanly pure for such an aspect of herself to exist. She was meant to vanish and completely disappear, but didn't because of Ritsuka Fujimaru. And also, a similar thing sort of happened with Ku Alter. He was made in a similar way to Jolter, but they never really explained how he was still able to be summoned again. And for Bedivere, for whatever reason, he wasn't in the Throne of Heroes apparently, but the version of him from the Camelot Singularity was brought there after his deeds in combating the Lion King and aiding in the ending of the incineration of human history. Miyamoto Musashi checks both those boxes, being a heroic spirit that should be impossible and is recognized by Ritsuka Fujimaru, and having been crucial in the efforts in helping to restore proper human history. The world is more than likely to recognize her and bring her into the Throne of Heroes, and with her power, she is a strong candidate for Grand Saber. Plus, from a narrative perspective, it would be amazingly satisfying to see her again, coming in as a grand servant to whoop some ass. While I would like Artoria to get the role, and Altera could have good potential depending on what they do with the beast she's summoned to fight, I do think Miyamoto Musashi is the most likely to be Grand Saber. But what do you think? Who would you choose? Let me know down in the comments below. I am very interested to find out. And with all that said, I hope to catch you next time in the void. Later.